A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for your patience. We have about 200 people online out of the 650 plus that have registered for this webinar today. The webinar is on sargassum challenges in the wider Caribbean region, responses and synergies. We are looking at different aspects, and this is the fourth webinar in a series of webinars. All told, we have about 200,500 that have registered over the past four webinars, and out of that, about 1,500 that have taken part. So we're very much looking forward to this session today. And before that, I should also introduce myself. My name is Mahesh Pradhan. I'm with the GPA team of UNEP here in Nairobi, and looking at the global partnership nutrient management. I wanted to say also that this webinar is divided into three distinct parts. The first part is an introduction to the Cartagena Convention. The second part is looking at country updates, and we're hoping very much to have some policy updates from the countries on this important issue. And the third part looks at the One UN approach, which is then followed by an interactive discussion. You will have an opportunity to put your questions on the chat box, which will then be taken up and shared with all the panelists for the interactive session. So without any further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite Leticia Carvalho, the head of the marine, the freshwater and marine coastal ecosystems, from UNEP Nairobi for her opening remarks. Leticia, your opening remarks, please.
Thanks very much, Mahesh, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues, depending on where you are. I welcome all participants to this fourth virtual Sargassum webinar, the last for this year. I hope you are all keeping safe during these challenging COVID times. Colleagues, I'm very excited to see how momentum is building on this topic of Sargassum, especially with the large number of attendees, over than 500 in the past three webinars. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation for all colleagues at Cartagena Convention for co-organizing this webinar, together with UNEP Science Division and IOC UNESCO. UNEP is proud to host the Secretariat of the GPA for the protection of the marine environment from land-based activities. GPA is currently focused on around three key partnerships: marine litter and plastics, wastewater, and nutrients. For nutrients, GPNM is one of these three GPA flag partnerships, while also serving as the focal point for UNEA for resolution on sustainable nitrogen management. It is really, again, a great pleasure to be here. Colleagues, since 2011, Sargassum impacts are widely experienced in the Caribbean, as well as across the Atlantic and West Africa, with the Sargassum biomass now comprising over the 20 million metric tons, informing a recurring Great Atlantic Sargassum belt, highlighting how interconnected the two regions are on this issue. According to the early study in 2018, scientists believe nutrients flooding in from the Amazon and Congo rivers, combined with an upwelling of currents off the coast of Africa, have essentially changed the ocean chemistry. This has created the ideal conditions for a bloom in production of the algae. In addition, according to a latest UNEP report launched earlier this month, impacts of sand and dust storms on oceans, a scientific environment assessment for policymakers. The fertilizing effect of desert dust is thought to also have an impact on algal blooms and contribute to Sargassum seaweed influx. While some years may be worse than others, researchers agree that the twin causes of ocean nitrification and climate change are not going away, and neither is Sargassum. Thus, we need to act with haste to minimize the pollution globally to curb the influx of Sargassum. While the influx of Sargassum has increased, There have emerged innovative practices on how to reuse the sargassum, such as compost and fertilizer, livestock feeds and biofuels, and nutraceutical and pharmaceutical products. And there are more that we are about to discover. Sargassum invasion is also closely linked to many of the Sustainable Development Goals, such as the SDG 6, water on clean water and sanitation, the SDG 14, life below water. At UNEP, preparations are currently underway for the 5th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, UNEP 5, with a kind of two-steps approach, with the first part scheduled in February 2021, and the second and more substantive session is scheduled for February 2022. Substantive, I mean that you will touch upon in the second part in the substantive resolutions. The first part of UNEA is aiming to touch upon the MTS, the midterm strategy for UNEP, the budget, and the program of work. We understand Caribbean member states are exploring the possibility of a possible sargassum resolution for UNEA 5. UNEP will be more than happy to provide technical backstopping and support as and when requested. The next webinar is in this series and likely to take place in early 2021 by bringing both sides of the Atlantic together. West Africa and the Caribbean, challenges and opportunities in both two sides of the Sargassum Belt. Colleagues, details will be communicated in the due course. I wish to thank you again, all partners, the UNEP Science Division, Cartagena Convention colleagues, UNESCO IOC for jointly organizing this webinar. And with my sincere thanks to you all participants for joining this webinar from across the globe, especially from the Caribbean. I wish you all a very stimulating webinar and discussions, and looking ahead to hear from you guys as soon as possible, aiming to tackle the preparations for the second part of UNEA 5. Thank you. Hand over to you, Mahesh.
Great. Thank you so much, Letitia. We'll now move on to Lorna, who's director of the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, for her opening remarks. Lorna, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mahesh, and it's a wonderful privilege and honor for me to be a part of this opening session for the 4th webinar on sargassum. I have quite a large personal stake in this, but before I get to that, I'd just like to bring you greetings from our awesome team here in Jamaica at the Secretariat of the Convention for the Protection and Development of the Marine Environment of the wider Caribbean region, better known as the Cartagena Convention. To all participants and registrants, I hope all 650 or more will join us today at some point for this sargassum webinar. I'd like to also thank the UNEP Global Program of Action Team, GPA, and UNEP Science Division, Joanna Akrofi in particular, and UNESCO IOC, Dr. Cesar Toro, who are online with us today for helping us to put together this webinar on sargassum for the wider Caribbean region. The Secretariat here in Jamaica hosts the 26 contracting parties of the convention, but we service all 28 countries that border the Caribbean Sea through the Caribbean Environment Program. And this is one of our program is one of the 8 regional seas conventions of UNEP. The Cartagena Convention, as you know, is the only regional legally binding agreement for the protection, development, conservation, and sustainable management of the marine environment and its coast of the wider Caribbean region. So we're talking the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico area, and any countries that wash on those shores. Sargassum, even though it's really an emerging issue for us in terms of addressing it, our last intergovernmental meeting in Roatan in 2019, countries we formally requested support from the Secretariat, technical support on this issue. However, I recall even before, and I come back now to the personal aspects, in 2011, when the Sargassum influx began, I recall I was not with the UN at the time. I was still with the government of Barbados, and everyone was at a loss. Nobody understood what was happening, and there was a lot of uncertainty and confusion. However, the region was able to come together very quickly around this issue at the highest level. I recall that prime ministers were calling the technical officers for support and assistance across the region. And really, the Caribbean was at the forefront, at the frontier of this issue right at the very start. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, we realized our colleagues across the pond in Western Africa were experiencing the same thing. So that kind of regional cooperation has really put the wider Caribbean region in an excellent position to support the global efforts that have been spoken to quite eloquently by Letitia. And now we are also learning that, that some countries in Asia are also being affected by other groups of species with very similar effects. So this means that the leadership that has been shown in the region so far will continue. And I'm really happy to see so many of you on the call, and looking forward to working with you through the Secretariat and with our excellent technical managers there to continue to address this issue, understand the science, the sources, the possible uses for both for socioeconomic activity, and even how to address it in respect of the tourism sector, which is really one of the big sectors, as well as fisheries, that has been affected by this. So we have been collaborating with several partners, and I can't even take the time to call all of them this morning, but we are also working with the Council of Ministers of Environmental Sustainability of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and the University of the West Indies, FAO, and our colleague from FAO is here with us as well. More recently, we've added UNDP and CARFA. I'd like to also recognize Leo Heilemann, our Regional Director of UNEP, who has been very, very supportive, not just in this process, but with our countries throughout the region on this issue and other environmental issues of UNEP, and you'll hear from him shortly. And so we are so glad to be here, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. I know a number of you would have attended probably the International Conference on Sargassum as well, that took place in Guadeloupe in 2019. And there were many, many delegations, and the Secretariat had a lead role in that conference, and we will continue to support you and to provide leadership and guidance, technical expertise, and partnership and cooperation as we go forward to try to continue to work with this issue. The Cartagena Convention Program officers from the Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife Protocol, as well as the Protocol on Land-Based Sources of Marine Pollution, will provide in the next session a number of details concerning specific actions that will be undertaken or that have been undertaken by the Secretariat to address this challenge. I urge you to utilize the chat. We are going to be monitoring it very closely. We want to hear your comments, your questions, even what you're doing in your little area of our region to address this issue so that we can partner with you. No idea is a bad idea because everybody is suffering from this. And of course now, along with that, we have the global pandemic. We've had a number of tropical cyclones this year, a record number of tropical cyclones. So the region is dealing with a lot, and our only hope of getting through all of this is to cooperate and to work together, to draw closer, not further apart, not to become nationalistic, but to work at the regional level together to address this problem. Thank you very much, and I wish you all an excellent webinar today. Thank you.
Great, many thanks, Lorna. We move on to our final speaker for the opening session, and I'd like to give the screen to Leo Heilemann, our Regional Director and Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean. Leo, the screen is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone, and good afternoon and good evening to those of you in a different time zone to the Caribbean region. Welcome all of you and all of the participants to this fourth virtual Sargassum webinar with a focus on the wider Caribbean region. I would like to express a really big thanks to the UNEP Global Program of Action team, the UNEP Science Division, the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, and the UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission for jointly organizing this seminar on Sargassum. Greetings from UNEP's Latin America and Caribbean Regional Office, which is located in Panama City and works closely with the 33 countries of the region, including 16 small island developing states. It is a known fact that the countries bordering the wider Caribbean Sea are heavily dependent on marine ecosystem goods and services for human well-being and socio-economic development, for jobs, livelihood, food security, foreign income, among others. Therefore, a great concern is the threat posed by the Sargassum influx to the environment as well as the blue economy, particularly tourism and fisheries, human health, and achievement of the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals in the region, which now, by the way, also has the COVID pandemic to contend with. As you have heard from both Leticia and Lorna, the issue of Sargassum affects both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, from the wider Caribbean Sea, including Brazil, to West Africa. This is reflected in what is called the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, which extends almost 9,000 kilometers across the Atlantic from West Africa to the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. In 2018, the weight of sargassum in the ocean was estimated at around 20 million tons. The stranding of unprecedented quantities to the tune of thousands of tons of this alga on the region coastlines may signal the new norm for the region. We hope not. Scientists suggest that there might have been a tipping point in the Atlantic. Recent studies based on satellite and other data suggest that abnormal ocean currents and wind patterns linked to climate change, combined with increased nutrient input from runoff of agricultural fertilizers and poorly or not treated domestic wastewater to the oceans, likely contribute to the massive increase in biomass and movement of sargassum around the Atlantic. As reported in the UNEP State of the Convention Area Report, SOCAR, for example, coastal waters in several areas in the region show high nutrient levels from land-based sources. In addition, the UNEP report launched earlier this month, as mentioned by Leticia Calvajo in the first presentation, Impacts of Sand and Dust Storm on Oceans, a scientific environmental assessment for policymakers, suggests that the deposition of nutrient-rich desert dust in the Atlantic Ocean is also contributing to the bloom and influx of sargassum. This clearly shows us how multiple natural and anthropogenic factors can interact with devastating consequences for the environment and human societies. Could the sargassum issue be another case like COVID-19 of nature biting back, nature hitting back? On the bright side, sargassum has inspired innovation. For example, ideas on the production of organic agricultural fertilizer, animal feed, building blocks, biogas, charcoal, etc. And many initiatives are ongoing in the region to exploit economic opportunities presented by Sargassum. There are, of course, many challenges and limitations. The transboundary and multifaceted Sargassum challenge requires collaboration around or across multiple scales, from regional to transatlantic and international. And also, it requires a multidisciplinary approach. Some examples of this approach or this type of approach is the signing of a Sargassum Declaration and Agreement to establish a Caribbean cooperation program against Sargassum by wider Caribbean countries and others at the first International Conference on Sargassum in Guadeloupe in October 2019. The Caribbean platform of the Global Partnership on Nutrients Management, which was launched in 2012. The UNEP-CEP and regional partners with support from the Caribbean Large Marine Ecosystem Project, or CLME+, is developing a regional nutrient strategy and action plan for the wider Caribbean. The Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, CRFM, has developed a regional protocol for the management of Sargassum on the coast of its member states. So there are a lot of efforts that are ongoing, and we need to strengthen our cooperation and collaboration at managing and dealing with this issue. The Cartagena Convention is the appropriate framework and mechanism to coordinate actions in the wider Caribbean on these issues. UNEP, through its regional office, can support as required, including liaison with the Forum of Ministers of Environment for the Latin America and Caribbean region. So in conclusion, I must say that there are many challenges and there are opportunities in relation to Sargassum, but international cooperation and collaboration is essential and is required. I am so very pleased with this large turnout today and the interest not only from across the Caribbean, but also globally on this priority issue of Sargassum. And I'm excited by what was mentioned earlier, I think it was Leticia, on a future webinar, West Africa, Caribbean, to discuss these issues. And this is, I think it's really important. I would like to thank the Cartagena Secretariat team, as well as the Caribbean representatives for their continuing support in addressing the Sargassum challenge, including the organization of the first International Sargassum Conference in Guadeloupe in October 2019. I express my appreciation also to the UNEP GPA team, and particularly through the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, the UNEP Science Division, as well again, UNEP IOC, UNESCO IOC, for jointly working on this and organizing this ceremony as webinar. I wish you a productive webinar and all success as we move forward to address what is perhaps one of the biggest environmental challenges, not only environment, economic challenges facing the Caribbean region today. Thank you so very much, and let's move forward jointly on addressing this issue. Over, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Leo. And here, I think we've had some really nice, insightful opening statements from Leticia, Lorna, and Leo. I can see the numbers climbing up to 284. We're getting close to 300 now on the line. So this puts us right on track for our first session, which looks at the Cartagena Convention. And for this, let me hand it over to my colleague, Ileana and Chris, to brief you more on the Cartagena Convention. And in the meantime, I think we can turn off our cameras. Leticia, Lorna, and Leo.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to colleagues around the globe, because we know that there is people also joining us from India and other parts of Asia. And why? Is because we have discovered that as we all speak about the Atlantic, this is an issue that even though there are different species, is also affecting our friends and colleagues from Asia. So we have begun just talking about the regional dimension. We are talking about the transatlantic dimension, and now we are just also facing this as a global issue. If we were not with the pandemic this year, I am sure that here for us in the Caribbean, we have some very key issues that are affecting us, one of them being sargassum. We will be talking about sargassum because it has high effects, as they have been mentioned, on our economy, environment, health, and social issues. With that short introduction, I would like to say that the Cartagena Convention Secretariat has been highly engaged since many years ago, producing information in high collaboration with the scientific community. And I am going to let my colleague, Mr. Christopher Corbin from the Lands-Based Source of Pollution, to guide us and walk us through what we have been doing, who we are, and more importantly, what we need to do all together, the scientific community, the UN agencies all together, and all you participants, as well as the political area and international organization. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ileana, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to everyone, and also acknowledging the contribution by all of our speakers. And what I'd like to do relatively quickly is take us on a bit of a journey through what we as a convention secretariat have been doing to support the work of Sargassum, and as termed in the presentation, looking at challenges, responses, and synergies in the wider Caribbean region. First of all, I think important to highlight that the significant role of UNEP in this regard in terms of a global environmental authority working within the framework of the United Nations. And Letitia has identified really how critical the role of UNEP is. So what have we been doing in the context of a regional agreement? The Cartagena Convention is really about regional cooperation. It's about protection and development. But I think most critically, it's about integration, as highlighted by Leo, an integration that focuses not just on conservation, but also on economic growth and sustainable livelihoods. The Cartagena Convention was established since 1983, entered into force in 1986, and is supported by 2 additional technical agreements on marine biodiversity and land-based sources of marine pollution. And it is the integration of those agreements that are really contributing to our work on Sargassum. I want to highlight the significant role being played by our regional activity centers, the Specially Protected Areas Regional Activity Center in Guadeloupe, hosted by the government of France, and those focusing on marine pollution, hosted by the government of Cuba and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, respectively. Research and monitoring is a key area of focus throughout the region on the issue of Sargassum. And what are we finding? We were very fortunate to have the input of many scientific and technical experts to develop a Sargassum white paper, which tried to identify what was happening with Sargassum, what were some of the key gaps, what were some of the key research findings. And in fact, we are now working with GESAMP, which is a group of independent scientific experts, to build on that white paper to really have a body of knowledge that could advise us moving forward. In the development of our recent regional strategy and action plan for marine biodiversity, Sargassum was identified as one of the key stressors. And Sargassum, not just because of the impact it has on aesthetics, on tourism, on fisheries, but also the potential carrier of invasive species, as well as microplastics. Our regional strategy and action plan actually proposed some very specific activities that would work to addressing these issues. And again, important to highlight the importance of integration and that we have regional-wide cooperation within the wider Caribbean to address this issue. I mentioned before the importance of the many scientific partners, and there have been many efforts by the Florida International University, by the University of Southern Mississippi, University of Southern Florida, and our own secretariat to start capturing that body of knowledge. And what's critical to inform that is also the role of citizen science. One of the major actions that we've taken as a secretariat, led by our Regional Activity Center for SPOR based in Guadeloupe, is the establishment of a dedicated Sargassum working group. And that group has been called for through our meetings of contracting parties. It was discussed during our technical meetings, our stacks, and it is now an integral part of the work plan of the Secretariat. Most importantly, it calls for the linkages, not just within the marine biodiversity community, but with fisheries and with pollution. And some of the efforts we are now doing is how do we get the message out to our decision makers and our policy makers through the production of videos, articles, briefing sheets, and also to the public. And these are some resources we've actually been able to mobilize already, and we hope to have these products ready for our next conference of parties in June next year. Significantly, as Leo mentioned, our large marine ecosystems in the region are at risk. The Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean large marine ecosystem, and the North Brazil shelf. And these are critical when you look at our overall dependence on the Caribbean Sea and its resources. But where is this nitrogen coming from? And with support from our two Global Environment Facility funded projects, IWECO on Caribbean islands and the CLME Plus, we are seeing heavy inputs coming from North America and from South America in terms of total nitrogen loads. Despite these initial findings, we still have some regional gaps. There are areas of research and monitoring that are needed, long-term research, the links with science and policy, engaging our academic and research institutions, documenting the lessons learned, and really utilizing indigenous knowledge. And we are slowly getting it to the regional and global agenda, whether it be the United Nations Environment Assembly or whether it be meeting of ministers within the Caribbean region. But we have some questions. As we've heard, is the sargassum as a result of nutrients pollution? And where exactly is the nutrients coming from? Is it sewage or is it agricultural runoff? And we see this dynamic and this relationship between Africa, the Sargasso Sea, and the Amazon. Is it Sahara Desert? And really emphasizing what was mentioned by Mahesh about the importance of transboundary cooperation. And we have the underlying issue of climate change affecting both sea temperature and ocean currents. Our regional strategy and action plan identified some core areas of focus: governance, research, management, communication and awareness, and financial sustainability. And as the Secretariat, we look forward to working with all of the regional partners in rolling out this so that we have a practical implementation plan moving forward. So what's next for us as a Secretariat? As mentioned, we will continue to work on that body of knowledge that we developed in the white paper of Sargassum, supported by GESAMP. We are enhancing and strengthening the synergies with the ongoing Caribbean Sargassum program to move towards concrete implementation. And as we form that regional strategy and action plan with short, medium, and long-term interventions, the importance of integration becomes more important. And we have some opportunities. We have a new EU-funded project for the African, Caribbean, and Pacific community to address the issue of compliance with multilateral environmental agreements. We have our regional strategies and action plans, both on nutrient reduction and on marine biodiversity. So this is an opportunity to really bring an integrative and collective response to this challenge and this opportunity. So as we move forward and working of one group of United Nations, a United Nations family, we've recognized the importance of multiple stakeholders being involved so that as a region and with other regions, we can address this critical concern for the wider Caribbean region. So on behalf of the team at the Cartagena Convention Secretariat, we'd like again to thank the UNEP GPA for facilitating this process, this discussion, this conversation, And we encourage you to keep following us, our website and social media, and please be in contact with any of us for further information. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris, for this summary of what we have been doing over the last years and what are the next steps for us to address this issue in the region. And as we all recognize, this is a transboundary outbreak phenomena, and also with a global dimension, not just for the Atlantic, as mentioned before. And we wish to appreciate the introductory words from all the colleagues from UNEP, and we will hear later on from IOC, UNESCO, and other UN agencies. And at the same time, we wish to appreciate the Swedish Ministry of Environment that is giving us some seed money for starting some entry initiatives, and also to the Organization of the African, Caribbean, and African States. Now I would like to go and move to the next session that is specific to the countries. What are the challenges that the countries are experiencing? What are the responses? What are the opportunities? And I wish to say that the severity of the Sargassum outbreaks, as we all know, varies according to the different countries. It's not totally homogeneous, and there are some countries that have displayed high concentrations, very high concentrations, according to one survey that we did in 2018, and there are some others that have mild. Nevertheless, today we are going to hear from 5 countries ranging from high to very high concentrations to display the severity that is markedly affecting the region. We are going to hear now from Guadeloupe, and then Trinidad and Tobago, the southeast of Mexico, and then I am going to make a summary of the Dominican Republic and Barbados. But before giving the floor to Dr. From Guadalupe, from Dr. Lydia, I am going to Madame Lydia Barley-Fleur. I would like to say 2 things that are very important to all of us. Number 1 is that we have been highly affected by hurricanes, and for some of them in the form of a tropical storm, for some others in the form of very high hurricanes, and probably we have not acknowledged the Colombia islands of Providence and San Andres, as well as so many Mesoamerican countries. And we wish to express also that solidarity, and all of us can help. Please don't forget, because for example, in Providence, 95% of the infrastructure was lost. So please don't forget in any moment that we are all connected, interrelated, and interdependent. And I wish now to please give the floor to Madame Lydia Barley-Fleur. She's a PhD. She's coordinator of the Caribbean Sargassum Program in Guadeloupe. And as you are all aware about the Sargassum Conference and Expo, she was one of the very key persons acting as part of this initiative. As a matter of fact, she was writing this declaration. Without more words and introductions, please, let's give a very welcome to Dr. Barley-Fleur. Lydia, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Ileana. I would like to share my screen, but it seems that I have some difficulties. Can you give me the possibility to do it, please? In the first place, by waiting on that, okay, here it is. Oops, what's going on? It seems that I have a little problem with that.
Take your time, Lydia. Don't worry, we are here for you. And
Okay.
perhaps what you can do is to start browsing where the presentation is. It seems to me like
Can you give it, can you see it now?
Not yet.
And now? Can you give me Can you give me the possibility to share my screen again, please?
Milka, please.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, thanks a lot, and sorry for this technical problem. In the first place, I want to thank the UNEP Program Action Team for inviting Guadeloupe to this webinar. And it's a real pleasure for me to present our perception and strategy on Sargassum. Well, as my fellow panelists mentioned before, the issue of Sargassum is a critical one, whether it be the reasons why the Caribbean region has experienced this massive stranding since 2011 or the various impacts it has had. So indeed, Sargassum constitutes a major threat to public health since the population being affected are at risk, and it is equally important to underline the environmental and socio-economic impacts of Sargassum in the Caribbean. But dealing with the management of Sargassum in the French system, please bear with me while I go through the various government arrangement between the national level and the local one, because I think it is important for you to have a clear and better understanding of where our strategy, meaning the regional council strategy, fits in the broader strategy. While there may be a national strategy, which is really important, it cannot be denied that the issue is primarily dealt with at the local level, which is the municipalities and the coastal cities that are directly affected. So the way the system works in Guadeloupe is that funds allocated to this issue have to trickle down to regional entities, but in spite of this, the process is quite efficient and everybody acts swiftly. So the French government has provided financial support to the question of seaweed removal and equipment purchase with a 9.5 million attribution. And this financial support is part of a global strategy based on 5 objectives. This responds in a very straightforward way to the challenges of Sargassum, meaning the questions of remote sensing, collection, research and innovation, or support to be given to private companies. However, when it comes to objective 2, because of how important the issue of rapid collection has become, objective 2 is one with which everyone abides by, meaning a collection of the Sargassum sealed stranding in 48 hour maximum. So it shows the importance given to safeguarding the health of the population living in coastal city. All these elements provide a better understanding of the Guadeloupe region strategy, which is based on 2 levels, a local level and an international level. The local one lies in giving financial assistance to local authority and businesses. And the international one is based on 3 interconnected actions: the Caribbean Sargassum Program, the International Call for Sargassum Research Proposal, and the Sargassum Exhibition. So what can be noted from the local level is the amount of financial resources provided by the Regional Council of Guadeloupe to the local authorities, which amounts to 1.3 million since 2018. And this fund assists local authorities with Sargassum collection within the compulsory 48-hour deadline. It is also used to finance the necessary technical equipment for this rapid collection. And finally, it has also been used to set up an air quality measurement network. However, beyond this financial support, the Regional Council of Guadeloupe has been strongly advocating for the enactment of a national law that would give the massive Sargassum stranding natural disaster status. But beyond the local response, the need to be able to act at the regional level in accordance with international guidelines has become very important for the Guadeloupe region. And to this end, the Regional Council of Guadeloupe has set up a cooperation program on Sargassum in the Caribbean. And the aim of the project is to develop a concerted approach on the question. So this cooperation program is organized through 4 work packages. The first one was achieved with the International Conference on Sargassum in October 2019 in Guadeloupe. The second deals with knowledge and information. The third one with surveillance and prevention. And the last one seeks to develop internationalization of program actions. And this cooperation program was co-designed with the partners, the stakeholder of the program, meaning the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Association of Caribbean States, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and the French territories in the Caribbean, as well as university. But this cooperation program is connected to an international call for Sargassum research proposal. And with regard with this international call, which was launched in February 2019, 12 research consortia have been selected in order to achieve the following objective: provide pragmatic solution to Sargassum stranding, increase knowledge on Sargassum, and create a community of knowledge and references expertise on the subject. So I'm not going to present in details the international call. Maybe when we have the debate, I will be to answer any question on that issue. So I want to go back to the functional module of the Caribbean Sargassum program. Module 1, the International Conference in December 2019 with a side event, which was the Sarg Expo Trade Fair. The aim of the conference was to take stock on Sargassum by presenting the state of the art in science, but also national and international position. And furthermore, the conference showcased the effort being made by relevant stakeholders in terms of designing a common strategic framework. The module 2 is a sub-program dedicated to knowledge and information related to the phenomenon. And this module seeks to collect and centralize all scientific and technical contribution on Sargassum, but it hasn't started yet. Sub-program dedicated to surveillance and prevention, the module 3, this sub-program aims to set up a mutualized monitoring and warning center with 2 components, one dealing with remote sensing and the other one with public health. And in terms of the public health component, its first working group meeting was held earlier in 2020. The terms of references of the call for expression of interest on air quality network in the Caribbean region were drafted. This action is implemented by both the OECS and the Regional Council, and the CEI deadline is at the end of December 2020. And in terms of a mutualized remote sensing component, the first meeting of the working group will take place on December 70th. In the first place, this meeting seeks to validate the inventory of surveillance system in the region. Then the participant will draft the terms of reference of the contract for the mutualized monitoring center. But, and this is my last slide, if SARCOP initiative demonstrates its willingness to pool resources, it will only have an impact if it is part of a strategic framework that could fit in 3 blocks of action. The first one focuses on the strong support to be given to scientific research. To this end, the support given to scientific research at an international level is an important element in order to help in designing public policy on Sargassum question. The second deals with action led at the regional level. On this point, it seemed important to establish a close link between measures adopted at the regional level and decisions taken at the local level. And the third one comes with action led at international level, given all the action taken by UNEP, UNDP, FAO, UNESCO. It might be interesting to establish a specific resolution dedicated to Sargassum at the 5th United Nations Environmental Assembly session, keeping in mind that all this action will only be efficient if Sargassum gets an international status within abiding normative standards of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for walking us through to the different initiatives and work that you have been leading and being part of in the different French territories in cooperation with different regional agencies and also international as well. And thank you so much. And we see how we all can interlink, because there are several initiatives in parallel, and this is what is fantastic, that we are all together here, so we can see we can enhance how we work together and make a very good regional proposal. With that saying, thank you, Lydia, and I wish to give the welcome to Dr. Rahana Juman, Director of the Institute of Marine Affairs. She is from Trinidad and Tobago. Among other things, Dr. Rahana, she has been supporting the international platform, intergovernmental science policy platform for biodiversity and ecosystems. So she is very a good candidate to help us with policies at regional level, how to take about these issues. And with that saying, I would like to say that according to the report on the amounts of sargassum in the region, it has been demonstrated that she will explain more, that Trinidad and Tobago is affected with high concentrations. Please, Doctor, I would like to give you the floor for your intervention. Thank you so much.
Hey. Good day to everyone. I'm hoping that you're seeing my screen. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, excellent.
Yes, okay. Yes. So good day, everyone. And again, thank you for UNEP GPA for allowing Trinidad and Tobago to participate in this webinar. Trinidad and Tobago is the most southern of the Caribbean islands, and since 2011, like most of the region, we have been affected by the large quantity of sargassum that's been washing up on our beaches, primarily on the coast, on the east coast or Atlantic coast of Trinidad, and on the windward coast of Tobago, Atlantic coast of Tobago, because we're a two-island state, a twin island state. I'm changing my. So in 2015, the sargassum coming up was extreme, more than normal. And that, of course, caused disruption to daily community activities, persons using the beach. It led to economic loss in terms of our fishing industry and our tourism. In Tobago, tourism occupancy dropped to less than 20%. Folks also reported damage to property in the terms of you had the light fittings and so on corroding after the sargassum remained a length of time and started to decompose. We also had complaints of public health threats via respiratory and dermatological effects, and of course the impacts on marine life and natural habitat. In 2015, the same time, we had a lot of sargassum coming up on our Atlantic coast in Tobago. We also recorded the loss of our Thalassia bed in a particular area. As well as we've had issues in terms of Trinidad and Tobago being one of the nesting sites for the leatherback turtles. We've had situations where the hatchlings get caught up in the large mats of sargassum. Even on Tobago leeward side in our marine protected area, back in 2018, we noticed a lot of sargassum in there, and we monitor marine productivity of the seagrasses, and we noticed a drastic decrease in productivity rates. So in terms of impacts on the ecosystem. In terms of NAP, so back in 2015, when it became a real big problem, the Institute of Marine Affairs, which is a government-funded research institute in conjunction with the UNDP Global Environmental Facility Small Grant Program, held consultations with key stakeholders to develop a national sargassum response plan. This plan was completed in 2016 and submitted to the government. In Tobago, however, they went ahead and they would have developed their own sargassum response plan. That's the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, in conjunction with the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. And theirs was completed in 2016 and more recently updated in 2018. Now, the elements of the response plan including an early warning system. We would have collaborated with the Met Services of Trinidad and Tobago with regards to looking at when they come off, the mats come off the South American mainland, and then using local trajectory modeling to kind of determine where on the beach, which beaches the sargassum will eventually end up on. In addition to that, it comprised of a communication strategy to inform key stakeholders and to put things in place, and of course the response plans with regards to the first responders, persons who are going to be out there to help remove the sargassum from the beach, as well as a research and development agenda. Now, both sargassum response plans, both in Trinidad and Tobago, although submitted in 2016 to central government and to the Tobago House of Assembly, have not been officially adopted. I think what happened after 2015, we didn't have too much of a problem in 2016, so priorities sort of changed. So as of now, there's no comprehensive approach to the management of sargassum, and there's no resources have been established or have been allotted to deal with these, to establish the key aforementioned elements, right? So there's no resources available in terms of identify for implementation of the plan. And of course, this resulted in a continued piecemeal and ad hoc approach to managing sargassum influx. Trinidad and Tobago is now developing an integrated coastal zone management policy. And under that initiative, we are now updating our sargassum response plan for Trinidad and the National Sargassum Response Plan, which we again hope to take to our cabinet for approval. Now, Tobago has been mostly affected, has been more affected actually than Trinidad. So they've had to deal with this on a more regular basis. And presently an ad hoc committee led by the Department of Infrastructure, Quarry and Environment monitors and manages incidents of sargassum bleaching in Tobago. There's the use of heavy equipment, which is not something we recommend, but because of the quantity of sargassum, they have been using the heavy equipment. And what they've been doing is creating berms with the sand and the sargassum to help in terms of coastal protection. However, uncertainty associated with these sargassum influx have resulted in poor planning and allocation of resources for cleanup activity. Every time there's a problem, there's always a rush to try to find resources to address the problem. Again, the THA, to execute the draft response plan, they have submitted to central government a project titled Managing, Monitoring and Mitigating the Impacts of Sargassum on People and the Environment in Tobago. And during the 2020-2021 fiscal, some allocations were provided, but it does not meet the cost for the entire project, but only just two components. So the division is also seeking to realize the objective of establishing a sargassum early warning system, and also guided by a project established in Guadeloupe and Martinique. The Coastal Zone Management Unit of the Tobago House of Assembly has engaged in a site identification exercise for the placement of air monitoring stations. And this initiative is complemented by a call for expression of interest for the Caribbean-wide air quality monitoring network. Now, in terms of research and development, we have made some headways at the University of the West Indies here in Trinidad and Tobago. They've been using extracts from the sargassum to do things like foliar spray, for hydroponically grown lettuce. So you would see the 3 treatments, the control, one treatment with ascophyllum formulation, and the 3rd treatment with Sargassum. And you would see much larger Sargassum over the time frame. So they've been looking at using that in terms of for hydroponics of lettuce. In addition to that, UE has also been these are just some of the publication using it as phytoelicitor activity of the Sargassum, basically to fight fungal infection in tomato plants. And they've been working with the farmers in the on the east coast of Trinidad to apply this phytoelicitor to see how they're able to suppress pathogenic infections in the tomato plants. In addition to that, in terms of research and development, the application of an extract from Sargassum as a biodegradable alternative in the reduction of solid waste, as well as the treatment of polluted water for domestic use. So UE, in conjunction with Skippered Rug Lab in the UK, have created this new bioplastic prototype, which looks like conventional plastic, but would be entirely biodegradable. A second part of that project, though, aims to create an industrial seaweed-based filter for use in wastewater treatment facilities, which would screen out heavy metals from water such as lead, cadmium, and mercury. And of course, this research has tremendous implication for marketing a viable product for export. So that's basically the update for Trinidad and Tobago, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for the excellent presentation that display the work that you have been doing at the coastal zone management and the plan that is upcoming pretty soon for the management of all these challenges. Also the responses, the scientific research that is very promising, excellent effort. And what I also like a lot is that you are mentioning several times the word synergies, which is very important. So thank you so much. Looking forward to keep strengthening our work and collaboration. As a matter of fact, IMAB is always helping the secretariat to the LDS protocol. So thank you again. So and now I wish to welcome to Dr. Efraín Villanueva Arcos that we have the gratefulness to have with us today. Dr. Arcos, Villanueva Arcos is the former rector of the university at the state level. And also he had been in planning in different positions in the past in the government, and Secretary for Ecology and Environment, SEMA, Quintana Roo of Mexico. He has been highlighted in several locations the effects of sargassums in the southeast. And with that saying, I appreciate that he takes the time to be with us today and help us to see how is the situation in this big area of the southeast of Mexico on what can we do together. Please, the floor is yours and welcome.
Thank you so much, Ileana, and thank my all colleagues. It's my privilege and honor to be here in this important webinar, and I want to share which will be the situation in Mexico. So it is quite important for me just to have the possibility to just to let you know about the situation that we already have in Mexico. Quintana Roo is the Mexican state on the Caribbean, and it is quite important the situation about economic focus that we already have in this region, that is mainly on developing tourism. Quintana Roo provides about the 44% of the total tourism revenues that comes annually to the whole country. That means the economic importance of tourism in this area. So the impact that we are been facing with the arrival of sargassum, it is quite important. So the federal, state and local governments are now working together trying to provide solutions to this kind of impact. So it is recently that the state governor has announced that each year in Quintana Roo, as in case of the hurricane season, we have keep in mind that sargassum season is, we have to organize all the activities just to prevent, to collect the biomass, and if possible, to use this seaweed that comes from the old Caribbean. Well, I just want to let you know which is the role of the public sector, how we are have been organizing these activities by the mandatory of the Mexico's president since 2019. The Secretary of the Navy, Secretaría Marina in Mexico, SEMAR, has been appointed to play the role as national coordinator in order to coordinate the participation of the 3 governmental levels to manage the sargassum arrivals in Quintana Roo. SEMAR as well established a horizontal coordination with other federal agencies as the Secretary of Environment, Secretary of Tourism, Finance Secretary, among others important federal agencies that are under the coordination of Secretary of Navy in Mexico. In the local level, in the state level, the government of Quintana Roo played the role to coordinate with municipalities, with the private sector, and other state agencies, just to organize and provide support to SEMAR as the national coordinator, just to have this bunch of activities that we already put in place to manage the with the sustainable vision about sargassum. SEMAR, Secretary of Navy, right now have been doing this role and coordinating federal, state, and municipal level, as well with the private sector, and has achieved really good results as follows. SEMAR is responsible for collect sargassum in open sea and shallow waters. About 4,252 meters of barriers has been set to impede the access of sargassum to the coast area, mainly in 45 public areas. SEMAR already have 6 sargassum ships and coordinate many other minor boats, and it is close to put right now a really important oceanographic ship. The name of this oceanographic ship is Natanz, and it's all the equipment that SEMAR already coordinate for collect the biomass in the coast, tractors, sweeping machines, and other kind of equipment that has provided by this financial organization through the local government and municipalities. This year, 17,865 tons were collected. And you just have to know that last year, the amount of sargassum collected was about 84,549 tons. The difference is quite large, and that meant that this year we receive less amount of this biomass. Well, as other kind of activities that SEMAR has been coordinating, and helicopter and other airplanes realize flights along the coast over the following areas, all the municipalities that run along the Mexican Caribbean coast, as Benito Juárez, in Cancún, Tulum, Isla Mujeres, Solidaridad, Puerto Morelos, Otompe Blanco, and Cozumel. And these flights helps to know the amount of sargassum, and this information is combined and confronted with observation made visiting the beaches on the routine walks by field teams. So the information from the air, it's combined with information from the field teams. And it is important to share with you that public beaches are under the responsibility of municipalities. In some cases, the municipalities have been putting barriers, and always local employees collect the sargassum in the coast. And this is an important activity that are being making the organization and participation of many people, even volunteers that have been participating with through the NGOs and other groups. And private sector has in charge of collect and clean the beaches in front of their touristic resorts and hotels. So barriers and participation of private workers are under their decisions. Many big resorts in Quintana Roo has been doing big efforts in this sense. So all these activities are under coordination of federal level through Secretaría de Marina, and through the local government. The local government play a key role, is to coordinate and organize the financial support to CEMAR. This includes with the federal rights that has under the responsibility of municipalities. State government has delivered to the municipalities 7 areas of land, treatment stations, we call it, in order to have a place to dry and treat the sargassum that comes from the sea. So the purpose of this activity is introduce an adequate management process of the biomass to avoid filtration and damage to the environment. Well, it is important that we have been trying to build social participation, and that just in order to provide transparency, accountability, and receiving, that's the most important issue, receiving advice from scientific recommendations, from scientific organizations, academia, NGOs that has been doing and working with the experience of sargassum. This is an officially organized technical advisory committee for sargassum that is integrated by many experts that has been providing important recommendations and participating as well with federal levels to organize the activities and standardize actions, criteria, and reaching synergies to design, implement, and evaluate an action plan for sustainable management of sargassum. This committee is organized with other commissions that education, monitor, scientific communications, assessments, and scientific, technical, and applied projects, and even trying to reach national, international linkages and legal framework. We are right now just trying to find how to use and make it advantage of sargassum. As you know, there are potential uses of sargassum as fertilizer, as construction materials, shoes, paper, biogas, and probably other products for food and pharmaceutical industry. Research about the harmlessness of sargassum is important to deploy the use. Right now, the Secretary of Navy has been doing important works in their labs, analyzing the content of heavy metals in the sargassum. So just to have a good information to avoid harmless to the people that are dealing with this biomass. Another point important that we have to keep in mind is that Sargassum arrivals has been with great variations, as I already mentioned. Since this year and compared with last year, the amount of Sargassum comes with a really less amount. So it is quite important the monitor and forecast activities that we have been dealing and working right now with the federal, state and local organizations, and trying to obtain with these all the expertise from academia and other scientific institutions. I want to mention that the National Institute of Ecology and Climate Change, INEC, in Mexico, recently released guidelines for sargassum. This document includes the experience and knowledge of many groups from academia, NGOs, local and federal authorities, among others, and provide specific recommendations in the sustainable management for this biomass. These recommendations are how to collect the sargassum in the sea, in the beach, how to treat the sargassum, how the possibility to produce it, and of course, how we have to deal with the final disposition. I just want to finish my brief presentation just to mention that we find important challenges for the near future. First, the consolidate the organization and logistics already established in Quintana Roo with the participation of federal and municipal level, where each governmental level and other sectors have to understand the role that they have to play in prevention and sustainable management of sargassum arrivals. We have to evaluate the impact of sargassum in the whole coastal area. We have about 900 kilometers, and not just in public areas. This is an important challenge because we have to coordinate with the private sector that are on the responsibility of the beaches that are in front of their infrastructure. As well, we have working with the federal agencies to reach a mandatory norma oficial mexicana, that it is the most important document that provides not just recommendations, but as well a specific obligation to each government level, federal, local, and municipal level, just to reach the best ways to handle the arrivals of sargassum, how to use the equipment. For instance, these guidelines forbidden the participation of these big tractors in the coastal area because we have to protect as well the turtles and other important marine life in the coastal area. And I agree with the other participants in this webinar that it is quite important to increase the international cooperation for monitoring, forecasting, and for share lessons learned for use and final disposal of biomass. I really are interested in having more information from FAO, for instance, the Food and Agriculture Organization, for knowing about how the use of biomass as fertilizer, for instance, is how to put in place, because we have been receiving many projects that comes from entrepreneurs that are interested in use the biomass for have this kind of economic approach. So thank you so much, and you will have more information in this website that is in this screen. And of course, I will be glad to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva Arcos, for your excellent presentation. I would like to congratulate you for all your leadership that you have demonstrated, and also because Mexico has been basically working on prevention, mitigation, research, forecasting, and this is an example to all of us, and thank you again, and we will keep discussing as we go. I don't know if now, I don't know if you can see my screen. Can someone confirm, please?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. I would like to give you some highlights of Dominican Republic, because unfortunately, the person that was going to give us the presentation have a last minute challenge and was not able to join us. But this is for you to know that also Dominican Republic has been facing these outbreaks of sargassum. Perhaps it's not easy to see, but if you see these little triangles in green, are demonstrated the coordinates where this has been recorded through the coast of Dominican Republic. And it's important to know because several groups have been trying to see how to address this situation, because it's highly affecting also the economy. And there is, for example, one group that is called the Punta Cana group that is trying to see how to use, how to prevent, how to remediate. And some highlights that we were able to kind of summarize here are that they have opinions on technical environmental evaluation of projects and initiatives on the management of sargassum, and they follow up in agreements reached in the framework of international multilateral meetings that have been very important last year. For example, the Sargasso conference that has been referred several times here in Guadalupe. Mexico also in Quintana Roo took the leadership of one of the conference, and Dominican Republic, and we are not mentioned so many of them because there were some others in Jamaica and in other parts of the region. So they have been actively working with webinars and in different opportunities. And most importantly, the development of joint work with the Ministry of Tourism and private tourism sector for the development of the installation of the barrier against sargassum. There are several examples that they have been testing, because as we all know, many scholars and many practitioners and people from the private sectors, what they want is that the sargassum doesn't reach the beach where the people is making the tourist activities, because you know that there are even websites. If you browse, you all of you, I expect, and I know that you follow this social media, when the packs of sargassum, now when people travel, they want to know if the beaches are or not infected with sargassum. So they also have been working in the development of the terms of reference for the preparation and implementation of the National Action Plan on Marine Litter. That this is being sponsored by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the development of the proposal for the feasibility study for the integrated management of the coastal ecosystems. So with that saying, I wish to close saying that also Dominican Republic is one of the countries that has been highly affecting their economy. As you all know, the small island development states depends highly, I will say probably totally, of the tourism. So this region has been highly hit now over the last year, not just for the pandemic, but before that, it was also because the situation with sargassum. With that saying, I wish to finalize this short presentation. We will provide you more information with the memoirs and also the report of this webinar, and also some information that was kindly provided to us by the Dominican Republic. And at that moment, I wish to ask my colleague, Ms. Milka, to show to us one short video from Barbados. As a matter of fact, we wish to congratulate them because today they are celebrating their independence. And they are having, I say, a good commemoration celebrations. And we also congratulate to our coordinator, Ms. Lorna Innis from Barbados. And please, Milka, the floor is yours. You can share the video now. Thank you. I think that the volume is off. Apologies, but we cannot listen, or probably it's just me.
Sorry, Ileana, are you able to follow?
Yeah, but we don't listen.
We can't hear.
Please check
The
the
volume is
sound.
off.
Milka, we don't listen, unfortunately. This is like Murphy's Law because we listen when we did the test, but now we don't have any sound.
The officials gathered at Bath St. John.
Fine
Okay,
now.
it's coming through. Yes, it's coming through now.
Okay, let me just redo it again.
It's washing ashore once again, affecting the eastern and southern coast of Barbados. The Sargassum Sea.
It went off again, sorry.
Liana, maybe we move on since we're running a little short of time.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, everybody. So for you to know that we are going to share also the link to this video. And now we want to move to the next and last session, one of the last sessions, and I would like to introduce my colleague Joanna Acrofi from Ecosystem Division. And what she's going to do for us is that we are trying to focus on implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. Basically, this is an effort in line with the SDG 17, as well as the One UN approach. We try to imprint the integrated approach, not just about the national level, but also global and regional levels. And we find out that it's very important that as well as the UN environment and different partners, academia, research institutions, and different countries and contracting parties display what they are doing, it's highly important to be closely linked and working in collaboration, for example, with the Food and Agriculture Organization and UNEP. So Joanna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ileana, and good afternoon and good morning to those of you who have just woken up, and good evening to those of you who have spent your day quite well. So this session, as Ileana already explained, is going to be about the One United Nations approach. We have heard from various speakers what they have been doing, and we have also heard what the international agreements, the Cartagena Convention, the JPA, and the region as a whole are doing together. However, as many of you are aware, in 2005, in the 2005 World Summit outcome document, the member states recognizing the importance of the unique experience and the resources that the United Nations system brings to global issues, recommended the implementation of reforms of operational activities for development aimed at a more effective, more efficient, more coherent and coordinated in a better performing UN country presence, with a strengthened role of the now UN resident coordinator, and through a common management program and the monitoring framework. Now, this gives birth to what is now referred to as delivering as one, and at the country level, and with one leader, one program, one budget, and where appropriate, one office. This has been going on for some time. And since Sargassum is such a common problem that encompasses not just UNEP, other UN agencies, we would like to hear from two of our colleagues from the UNDP and FAO on their experiences with the One UN approach in regards to the Sargassum challenges, the responses, and the synergy. So we will first hear from Ana Maria Nunes. Ana comes with more than 14 years experience working in sustainable development management programs and portfolios in energy, climate change, chemicals, and waste, in addition to biodiversity and international waters, working in the Latin America and Caribbean region, as well as the Asia Pacific region, to support the national and regional needs, working with various donors and stakeholders. And she's currently the regional technical specialist for water, oceans, ecosystems, and biodiversity at the Regional Center for Latin America and Caribbean, UNDP. Ana, you have the floor. Tell us about your experience of One UN approach.
Thank you so much, Anna. It is my pleasure to be with you today. Just want to confirm, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just, okay. Well, as I said again, thank you so much for inviting us to this very important webinar. As Joanna said, I am going to share with you a little bit about our One UN approach and the challenges, responses, and synergies in Sargassum from UNDP side. I'm sorry. This is, yeah. So I just have 5 minutes, so I don't stop in some slides as this one. All of you know the global environmental impacts that we are facing, but I just want to stop here on the 2030 agenda and the approach that UNDP is following to get the targets, and also to face the main impacts that these the global impacts has faced for us. So now we are proposing like a 3 spheres: the economic, the society, and biosphere spheres for attending the 2030 agenda. This kind of approach will give us the opportunity to work in an integrative way and to give a kind of a more comprehensive approach between the coordination of the different SDGs to face the 2030 agenda. So here I just want to share with you the solutions that UNDP has proposed for facing the 2030 agenda, covering poverty, governance, resilience, environment, energy, and gender. In this slide, I am not going to mention all the results, but this is the screenshot on the 2019 report of UNDP in these different signature solutions. And in each of them, you can see the synergies with our UN sister agencies at the bottom of each signature solution. So this is the way that we are facing the 2030 agenda, as also applying the One UN approach. In terms of sargassum, I have heard from different presenters today some projects that we are supporting as UNDP, and I just want to summarize a little bit a few of them. In terms of actions specifically for sargassum, UNDP is working on a UNDP accelerator lab, and maybe you have heard one of them is the UNDP Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean Accelerator Lab. Here I am just going to mention a few examples. They are working with specific innovators with experiments using sargassum as bioplastics, energy, and many other sub-products. In the accelerator labs for climate change, for instance, in Jamaica, they are tackling sargassum seaweed by converting it into a goat feed cheaper, which is cheaper than in those in the market. Also, we're working very important. We have very important interventions with the small grants program in the majority of our projects. So here, one example for sargassum is the removal and utilization of sargassum from the east coast of St. Lucia to create organic compost for farming industry. And well, we have a lot of other interventions. In terms of the global portfolio in the nature, climate, and energy, we are working with international waters, ecosystems, and biodiversity, energy, and climate change. You have here also about our CLME Plus project, in which we are working with Sargassum Reef as an input for the SOMI report, as well as working in the SAP implementation. In the IWECO project, which is led by UN Environment, we are supporting with SGP interventions. And in 2021, we are starting the TDA SAP preparation for the Pacific Central American LME. In terms of ecosystems and biodiversity, we also have some interventions in terms of sargassum, mainly in the management of invasive alien species, and also working in protected areas management and medial projects. In energy, we're working in projects using sargassum as a fuel for energy generation. And in climate change, we are supporting the NDC's increment for the ambitions of the NDCs. So working in adaptation and mitigation actions. In many of these NDCs, sargassum application is being included. In terms of challenges that we are facing as UNDP for working with sargassum, we need to introduce the topic as priority for nature, climate, and energy projects. So we need to include it in our portfolio. We need also find a consolidated partnerships and alliances to implement intervention on the ground. Introduce the topic as priority in public policy development, for instance. Scaling up research results into impact interventions. We were talking about it a lot with Elena in a call that we had before. Also, we need to create capacities at different levels to understand and also be aware about the sargassum priorities, activities, and discussions. In terms of synergies, you saw my previous slide on the different synergies that we are having for the signature solutions and for attending the 2030 agenda. But a part of that, we are working in more than 170 countries around the world with a presence in country offices, and also working in every of them with NGOs, CSOs, and any other stakeholders. So in general terms, our conclusions for this webinar is, and also for future actions, is that we as UNDP are open to support current and new projects about sargassum to face challenges and reduce its impacts. Also, we are working and will continue working with our UN sister agencies in these and other topics toward the 2030 agenda. And finally, we are really open to support the sargassum capacity building, knowledge management, and awareness raising actions. I think that this is all my presentation. I really would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna. That was very interesting, telling us about the project that UNDP is carrying out at this time, how the various areas like international waters, the ecosystems, biodiversity, energy, and climate change, of course, is helping or intervening to support this sargassum issue. We also heard about the challenges, and most interesting of all is the synergy that you are building with other UN agencies, NGOs and CSOs and so on, and how you are opening up even to build capacity within your various stakeholders. So thank you very much. That is very interesting. Next, we will move to Iris Monero from FAO. So from FAO, Iris is actually the Regional Project Coordinator for the Climate Change Adaptation in Eastern Caribbean Fisheries Sector Project, which is normally referred to as CC4Fish project, and is based in Barbados at FAO, the sub-regional office for the Caribbean. So Iris, you have the floor. Tell us.
Thank you so much.
A bit more about your project.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here, and thank you so much to UNEP for inviting me to present today on behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization. So as Joanna mentioned, I'm the Regional Project Coordinator of the CC4Fish project, which is for nearly 5-year project in the Eastern Caribbean, about $5.5 million, funded by the DEF. And originally under the CC4Fish project, we were only planning to look at the impacts of sargassum on some key fish species in the region, but as the project moved along, which started in 2017, and we've had some very heavy episodes of sargassum and more requests to FAO as well, we started branching out and looking into a variety of activities. So for today, I am giving you, I'm giving you some, it's a little bit of a teaser towards some of the activities that we've been funding and supporting and developing under CC4Fish. It's only 5 minutes. I think some of these activities have already been highlighted in previous webinars, but I'm sure there are new people as well. And after my presentation, I'll be sharing the links to some of the documents and reports and so on that can be of use to people. So we started, as I said, looking at the impacts of key fish species. Then we started developing and supporting the Sargassum Outlook Bulletins, as well as a best practices guide for Caribbean fishers coping with sargassum. We're also currently supporting 4 countries in the Eastern Caribbean with their sargassum adaptive management strategies, and have recently developed the Sargassum Uses Guide, which has also been presented previously. So as I said, we started out looking at the impacts on the key fish species, and particularly dolphin fish and flying fish, as they're very important in the Caribbean region. We've seen issues and challenges for fisher folk in terms of accessing landing sites, but also challenges at sea in terms of using particular gear types, overheating of engines, as well as sargassum getting stuck in propellers, for example. But you've also seen other impacts in terms of the fewer days that fishermen have out at sea, and the change in fishing behavior and so on. So what we found is, and this all the work is in collaboration with synergies here, great work by all of them. So firstly, they found that for dolphin fish in comparison to pre-sargassum and then after the episodes of sargassum is that dolphin catches decreased by 37%. And for flying fish, it actually decreased with 52%. As I'd like to highlight, this is not just due to, for example, there perhaps being less flying fish available, also the inability to catch these kind of fish. But I'm based for the last 8 years, I've been based in Barbados, and for those in the region, they would know that Barbados is known as the land of the flying fish. So you can imagine that this has a great impact not only on food security and employment, but also in terms of culture. So actually Hazel Oxenford and I wrote this article saying, will we become the land of the amberfish? Because amberfish was one of the species that had a great increase due to sargassum, whereas obviously the flying fish was going down. And another aspect that is important to highlight was that we CC4Fish supported the development of this sub-regional outlook bulletins, because as you would all be well aware, you originally only had these sort of rather broad gridded predictions of sargassum arrivals, but it was quite hard to see, especially at a more local level. So these outlook bulletins were developed originally every 3 months, but now every 2 months, because it's also supported by other projects now as well. And it looked specifically at, at the Eastern Caribbean, and then divided by the North, the Middle, and the South. And it, it would show the potential arrival for, say, the coming few months, and then also looking backwards to last year, for in this case 2019, how would that compare to what we saw last year? And it also shows that the implications for the tourism and the fishery sector. So here you see my bar in red in terms of the implications for the fishery sector. So for example, for this last bulletin, it would see, you could see it would really provide sort of an overview for the fishery sector in terms of what can we expect. So we're seeing a low sargassum abundance, low catches of dolphin fish. So we're expecting reasonable landings for the pelagic fishery for the coming season. The project then also developed a best practices guide for Caribbean fishers coping with sargassum. This sargassum guide is really based on the experience of fisher folk. It's based on a lot of interviews with fishers, so it's really because the fishermen were already showing a lot of adaptability. They were already, as soon as the sargassum started, they were trying to see what they could use, for example, to protect their engines or their rudders, propellers, anything that they could do themselves, also in terms of the diving gear and so on. So this best practices guide provides some insights in terms of what can fishermen do when they're already, say, on the ocean and there are large mats of sargassum. Also in terms of, for example, with spearfishing, because obviously the impacts of sargassum will be different according to the different fisheries, and also in terms of the volume, as well as showing some sort of indication what a fisherman can do in terms of the gear use. And then we're supporting 4 countries, so we say the 3 Saints, so St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and then Grenada, in terms of developing sargassum adaptive management strategies. Originally under CC4Fish, we were using the CRFM sort of framework for sargassum management plan, which was well developed, but as knowledge sort of moved along, it was also realized that the management plan needed to be a bit more adaptive and flexible and dynamic in terms of the information that's available and how you respond to it. So perhaps rather than a rather fixed management plan, it would have to be something that is more like a hazard plan that's adaptable. So these 4 plans are currently being developed, and Barbados will also support, based on the framework that's being developed under CC4Fish, will also be supporting Barbados with their sargassum adaptive management strategy and looking at various angles. So the guiding principles, the scope, the authorities, the institutional arrangements. Obviously, sargassum management needs some sort of national intersectoral coordination mechanism, and who will be the lead of that, and what organizations are involved, and so on, as well as the more financial matters the action and operations, but also the appendices looking at, for example, the beach profiling. What are the characteristics of this beach profile? How would that, differ in terms of responses for all the different beaches? And last but not least, there's the Sargassum Uses Guide, which has been shared. A previous draft has already been shared. We funded this, the Season for Fish project funded this Sargassum Uses Guide because originally FAO was getting many questions in terms of particularly agricultural use. Is it safe to use? Will it work? What about the levels of arsenic and so on? So there were many different questions. So we felt as FAO it was very important to develop a very thorough analysis of all the different uses and providing people with good insights in terms of the opportunities, but as well as the challenges. So this report was developed, which is now available online in terms of an advanced draft, which shows, a complete overview of the chemical composition, is also with the different species of sargassum, the potential uses. So these are 14 different uses, and I'll show in the slide the different uses going way beyond just the agriculture sector. The Sargassum Biomass Scalability Index, so in terms of what could you do with one fresh metric tons of sargassum, how many products per different use could you produce? And it also shows all the case studies in the wider Caribbean in terms of the entrepreneurs and researchers. So it has a really big directory of what we now know as the entrepreneurs working on this in the region, as well as the researchers, to create a network and support partnerships in the region. But obviously there are also the many challenges and implications, and that is also highlighted in the report. So that's now freely downloadable. So just to show you here, all the different uses, ranging from agriculture to the food industry, cosmetics, paper, anti-fouling, and so on. And the authors has done an amazing job. And for those interested, I know there were some questions previously in terms of the valorization of sargassum. So this is something that could really, provide you insights in terms of this possible valorization of the sargassum uses. Yeah, so this is something I developed under the Sargassum Management Plan as well, the Sargassum Uses Guide, which I mentioned in terms of what could you do possibly with 1 metric ton of fresh sargassum. And I find this figure to be very interesting in terms of all the possibilities and how this really, some will provide a lot of volume, some won't, and so on. So you can all download this. So thank you very much. And with that, I actually come to the end of my presentation. And thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Iris. Thank you. That's a lot of information coming from your project on the best practices, the guide uses, and also the way sargassum has actually affected your project outputs. Being able to present us with an expected outlook to the fishermen and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. That's a lot of information which I believe participants will be very interested in. So at the end of it, we'll be able to share the presentation slides and all the links and so on to help us all get enough information about sargassum. So with that, I will close the session on the 1UN. Of course, if there are any questions on the 1UN session, you are welcome to post them in the chat box. But since we began, we've had 7 panelists, and they have all been giving us lots of information. And we have a number of questions which have already been posted. Questions from utilization, valorization, monitoring, the origin, the mystery of where sargassum has come from. And we hope that science will be able to afford us some of these answers to some of these questions. Where do we all meet when it comes to sargassum? And how do we share information? How do we build capacity? These are some of the questions that have been posted around these topics. So I will invite the panelists All the panelists, kindly turn on your cameras. We hope that we can accommodate all of you. And you can each pick the areas where these questions have been posed. I think we will start with, I'm not seeing Iris yet, because there were questions on valorization and utilization, specifically questions on how producing fertilizer. Okay, we can wait with that one, but I will ask the panelists to pick up the areas that they have selected. Iris, I was waiting for you to start off with utilization,
Sorry.
valorization, because that is an area that a lot of people are interested in. There's nothing like waste. So if we are able to make good use of Sargassum, it's very good. So maybe you can start that off whilst the others will take turns to.
I have to say, I'm going to answer this very quickly, because I just think that the Sargassum Uses Guide is an excellent starting point for people to sort of assess the uses, because it really provides a complete overview in terms of what are the opportunities for each of these 14 uses. So I imagine this has really worked out really well. But also the challenges, you know, is the arsenic content for this particular use going to be an issue or not? Could you use it for animal feed? Could you not use it? Could you use it for non-consumptive uses? You know, obviously it has a higher tendency for success than the consumptive uses. So I would like to guide people towards this Sargassum Uses Guide in terms of looking at the opportunities for Sargassum.
Thank you, Iris. In the interest of time, I don't want to go through the questions because the questions are already posted. So I'll invite the speakers to take up the questions that are of interest to them and just highlight very briefly on those issues that they have picked up. Can we start with Lydia?
Yes, I picked up a question relating with the way and the how to know the origin where Sargassum come from, and I think that it's very important to support international scientific research in order to go through scientific consensus on the causes of Sargassum. And well, I will talk about the international call for Sargassum research proposal, and there is a theme related with the prediction of the formation of Sargassum and trajectories, and I think that as consortia of researchers which are going to work on this theme will provide some interesting informations and knowledge on this issue. So it was a question that I think it was relevant with regard with one aspect of my presentation.
Thank you very much. I will move next to Dr. Efren Valakos. If you can pick up your questions.
Yes, thank you. I received a question about the effectiveness of the barriers that has been put into the sea. Barriers has been presenting good results, but the problem that we have been facing is that the sargassum collected in the barriers has to be picked up every day and probably 2 or 3 times each day. And the problem that we are facing is right now in the docks, because we have to organize how to collect the sargassum, that when the sargassum reach to the docks, because we need to put some trucks, another kind of a logistics organization, not just to put the to collect the sargassum into the barriers, but as well to put the sargassum into the final disposition areas that we are organizing for that. So it is good results. The barriers has been presenting good results for collect and the possibility to pick up the sargassum, but we need to improve the logistics inland.
Thank you very much. That's very, yes, if you want to
Joanna,
add to that.
I wanted to add that I really agree with a friend, and I was thinking about creating a real value added chain between the collection of sargassum and the way we are going to put valorization on sargassum. And we have to think about this trajectory in order to see sargassum not as a vicious circle, but a virtuous circle. That is what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. So let's move to Anna, so we can finish the top row. Anna, can you highlight some issues?
Yeah, I was reading the questions that we have in our chat, and I was mainly interested in the one that from C Combinator is a kind of company collecting sargassum in Quintana Roo. So I was reviewing for preparing the presentation that I did all the activities that UNDP were doing along a Latin American region. And in Mexico specifically, with the biodiversity project, they created the Sargassum International Network. So if they are interested, I can contact the country office and give them the opportunity to contact these organizations and trying to see the opportunities to work together in the country. And also in any other country, this is the UNDP role also to work together with the countries and the different organizations in this topic and many others. Oh.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris, your take.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and thank all of the participants for the comments and the questions. I've been trying to monitor a few of them. So a few things come to mind. One is the amount of activity and research that's going on. For example, there was a comment about work at the University of the West Indies in Mona by Professor Weber about extracting minerals from sargassum and creating a fertilizer liquid. This, of course, is very relevant to our work on nutrients and to our work on food security and collaboration with the FAO. So definitely the need to compile all of these is going to be very important. I also saw a reference to the heavy metal content of sargassum and the importance, again, of having research and analysis that is able to identify those levels, which then has implications for the type of use of the sargassum afterwards. And then there was the point about the causes and the early detection, and again trying to identify what is really contributing to the actual proliferation of sargassum, to be able to have some kind of forecasting done. So again, the importance of integrating nutrient monitoring, climate change monitoring, the monitoring of ocean currents, so that the response can be as integrated as possible. So those are a few things I picked up, Joanna. And then there's actually a very interesting question here, which I can't answer, but it speaks to harmonized monitoring for sargassum. And I'm wondering if any of the colleagues have any experience in terms of the protocols that could be established. So So that would be my feedback based on the very good comments and questions that have been raised. Thank you.
Joanna, if you
Thank you
allow
very
me
much,
to take
Chris.
the floor, I can
Yes,
follow up.
I'm coming to you, Ileana. I'll give you an opportunity next, and then we will leave Director Leo to fill in the gaps. All the gaps will be for
Thank
him.
you so much, Joanna and Chris. I wish to say that there was a question calling for if all countries in the region have capacities to process their own remote sensing. Observation is kind of related to what Chris was mentioning, and if are there mechanism, platforms, or citizenship, citizen science monitoring. And in that regard, we all are aware of the existence of the Optical Oceanography Laboratory from the College of Marine Science with the University of South Florida. They produce the reports, and all of us are kind of fed with this information. They provide links to the Sargassum forecast, or what they call it the outlook bulletins, but this is regional. And they work closely also with NOAA, and there is a citizen science. There are a couple of applications. Chris showed to you that there are some developed by some international Florida University, or others or application that is streamlined with NOAA now, and all of them are hosted in NOAA. But I wish to know if also Dr. Efrain also mentioned to us that they have some forecasting and through airplanes, and then they have more in situ direct, because what happens with these regional assessments, there are models and are not necessarily indicating exactly the point where this is going to be outbreaking. So perhaps the countries are the ones that can say if there is still need to develop like a national level some forecasting system other than the citizen science and all these models that are feeding into the NASA and NOAA projects, that this is more up to the countries to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ileana. That was very useful, and definitely we have to bring everything together. And so, Leo, I'll give you the opportunity. Your take. How do we move from all of this?
Joanna, thank you. Thank you very much, you all. And thank you for a wonderful webinar and wonderful exchange. I think, first of all, there's so much information that came out of this, and it's such a complex issue. The first thing I want to touch on is something that Lydia at least emphasized in terms of the collaboration research. We saw a number of interesting type projects and publications that were presented here, and actually things I didn't actually know about. And I think we really need that collaboration and networking of the research institutions in this area. That is key. So that one first, but also I think that the universities and scientific institutions need the support in terms of moving on that area. So I believe that the government institutions would need to give financial and other support to these institutions to be able to do that. That's one aspect. The other aspect that came out very strongly is what Dr. Efrain was talking about in terms of the protection of coastlines, but also the rather huge logistical challenges that this involves: transportation, disposal of the sargassum, or final treatment of sargassum, which implies significant costs, particularly at the local or municipality levels. And so therefore, governments really need to pay attention to this aspect, which cannot be handled by research institutions and which significantly impact on the economies of the region, particularly tourism and also in the fisheries area. So I believe that governmental budget and support in terms of the logistical aspects, coastal protection, recovery, transport, disposal, and treatment. And I think those two aspects are key in terms of us moving forward. And finally, the aspect of the collaboration and cooperation among agencies, among countries, among regions. We talked about the impacts in West Africa and the impacts in the Caribbean. I think that aspect is needed to be incorporated. That area where we have the collaboration among the institutions, we have the research, we deal with the logistical issues, I think is key that. to that. And also another aspect contributing to the problem, this came out with Christopher, this came out with other presentations, in terms of the land-based sources of marine pollution, in terms of the nutrient loads in the region. We have increasing impact that is, and the general changes in the dynamics of ocean currents and wind, particularly impacted by man's impact on the environment and the impact on climate change. And these changes are causing shifts in the norms that we are experiencing. So that upstream action in terms of nutrients being introduced, in terms of pollution, and so the land-based sources of marine pollution, I think, is another area which contributes to this problem and needs to be addressed. So I believe those four key factors, the upstream waste, the international cooperation, the research, and the logistical and financial aspects in terms of dealing with the sargassum are things that we need to do with our networking and our collaboration. So overall, I think this has been really, really very interesting, a super webinar, but it shows how we are all interconnected, and it shows how we all need to work together to at least start addressing this, this problem. Thank you, and over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Leo.
Joanna?
You have done such a wonderful job. Yes, please.
Ana Maria.
Sorry,
Anna. This is Ana Maria. I just wanna elaborate a little bit more on what Leo said, and I just wanna compliment saying that all the 4 points are really important, but also it is really, really important to escalate up all the research into public policy. Otherwise, we will be staying all the time in, you know, in doing research, but research needs to go beyond, need to go into public policy, need to go in scaling up actions, not only in piloting, but also in medium and high sites in the implementation. So I just want to complement that 4 very summarized points that Leo said. And the final one is that awareness raising and capacity building need to be like a mainstream in all these topics. Otherwise, it won't be possible to work directly on this issue. I'm sorry for taking the floor, but I just want to highlight these points over Leo.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Joanna,
Okay.
I think it's, sorry,
yes.
That's excellent what you have added there, Ana Maria, really pertinent. And I think also in addition to this, raising the political level, for example, to the ministers of environment, ministers of planning and finance. I think, so I think we have added, you know, 3 more points to the 4 points. So I think we have 7 points. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And they are all very important points. And the good thing is that you have ushered us into the next session beautifully. And I'll hand over to Mahesh now to go over the conclusion and the way forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Many thanks, Joanna, and to all our panelists. That was very interesting, though it was a bit short. So for this final concluding sort of session and the way forward, let me ask my colleagues Cesar at IOC, UNESCO, and Lorna at the Cartagena Convention to please turn on their cameras and to share very briefly their thoughts. Much has been already said by Leo on possibly the way forward in terms of moving from this webinar. I pass the floor first to Cesar.
Thank you very much, Mahesh. And I would like to thank all the panelists and all the interveners, and as well as the follow-up for the Q&A session. It has been very rewarding to continue with this discussion that thanks to the work of UNEP in Nairobi and all our fellows in the Cartagena Convention Secretariat and at the regional office as well, jointly with the IOC in these previous webinars, because this is the 4th of a series of webinars. And what is important to take into account is that while we were following all these webinars, we could see the advances that in the last years and months we have been achieving concerning the management and discussing the question of the Sargassum monitoring management and the understanding this phenomenon. So we, as you can see, we can have a large number of activities, whether from the point of view of at the national level, local level, scientists, the industry has been trying to find out a niche here concerning business opportunities and also kind of new solutions, etc. So we can, as you all mentioned in this, and we can see is there is a large number of newsletters, Outlook bulletins. We have for instance, the creation and the establishment of one of the largest scientific and expert network like SARNet. You have the Sargassum Information Hub establishment. So you have a few monitoring information systems that are already available. And we have a large number of research activities. And also a large number that is, we can see now only there are 194 people still in our webinar, despite we are going over the hour. Yeah. So this is a clear message that there is a large community looking at what is going on in Sargassum. So I will also like to point out the importance that the activities at national level, that was pointed out also by Ana Maria and Leo, the importance of governments to take the lead and also show leadership at the county, municipality, etc., and national level. Whatever we do, we provide at the UN agencies and the regional regional agencies, and also NGOs, etc. All of us who are working, the real change will happen if we have empowerment by the local communities and governments to establish that. So the need for the political will to address this issue is extremely important, and we cannot we should remind all of ourselves that in the region, from the point of view of economic point of view and development point of view, this is an issue that it should be addressed because it has direct impact in the economies of the region. Without, even though without the COVID-19. So I think that this is extremely important that we continue with this and sustain effort and support from the UN agencies and all our programs to provide that to countries. I would like just to mention that we as IOC of UNESCO, we continue to work with our partners for developing the Sargassum forecasting system. And as well as I would like to mention that as you can see, we have a large number of research questions that has been should be answered, and still we need to explore. For that reason, IOC's core Global Hub and GESAMP and EuroC, we are organizing an open science meeting on Sargassum that is scheduled for the second half of 2021 in Mexico, if COVID-19 will allow us to organize. Otherwise, we are going to do virtually. But what is the overall objective of the open science meeting on Sargassum is the identification of research priorities to understand Sargassum growth dynamics. And that will be, this meeting will allow to conduct a thorough review of current knowledge on Sargassum dynamics. And also, the purpose is to join this initiative in order to establish a global project on Sargassum that it will be submitted to the UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. That is extremely important. That will be continue. The idea is to use this open science meeting to focus on the further training needs and capacity development we need in the region. And so I would like to stress a few conclusions to wrap up concerning this. First of all, is that there is a clear need for regional coordination and collaboration. That was already several times stressed, but I would like and that coordination and collaboration is beyond national jurisdiction, and we need to have a better understanding of the geographic origin, causes, spatial and temporary patterns, management options, as well as the economic potential of sargassum. Also, there is a critical need for comprehensive management planning for increased resilience and to benefit from sargassum influxes. Not only look at sargassum as a problem, but also as an opportunity. And then I would like to finalize with two elements here. We have two major frameworks. That is the Cartagena Convention and the Abidjan Convention. Yeah, that we have available for as a framework for coordination. Yeah, directly related to and connected to different member states. So that is extremely critical, and that we have also that strong interregional cooperation and collaboration between the West Africa and the West Tropical Atlantic as with West Africa. And finally, I invite all of us to join the initiative, the UN Decade for Ocean Science, of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, in a proposal, as I mentioned, that we a few seconds ago, on preparing based on the results of the Open Science meeting, to be able to develop a proposal for a sargassum project for the decade. I would like to, with this, thank all of you and my colleagues from UNEP and my other fellows from IOC UNESCO. Thank you, Mahesh.
Great. Thank you, Cesar. Lorna, over to you for the final word.
Thank you very much, Mahesh, and thanks to all of you. It's been a wonderful experience for me to just sit here and listen. Some of it, of course, I'm well aware of, but it was really nice, particularly to hear from the countries of AO Caribe, the regional subcommission for IOC UNESCO, as well as the Cartagena Convention, Trinidad, France, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Barbados, to hear some of the issues, some of the problems, and above all, some of the fantastic actions that are being taken at the national level. And I'm sure that there are a number of people still on the call from other countries who have already realized that there's something that you can do at the national level to take this forward in association with regional and national partners. It's clear that the interest continues to be high, and it's obvious why that is. The socioeconomic impacts are immense, and I would finish with a quick story about a concern of mine. I went home to Barbados a few years ago and realized that because of the issue with sargassum and the fact that the seaweed itself was actually exposing a significant number of juvenile dolphin fish to fishermen, that now within the various cooking spaces on Friday evenings, you could now order a whole dolphin fish, fried or grilled or whatever. And I had never seen that before, because of course we know of dolphin fish, being in excess of 3 feet in length and so on. This was unheard of, and I began to be concerned that if this was the trend in the region, that eventually there would be a significant loss because of the the fact that they had reached maturity and had reproduced, that there would be some challenges with the population later on. Iris told us that there's already quite a significant percentage reduction there. So, you know, I agree with our colleague from UNDP, and thanks to our partners, that we really need to move from research to policy. And I want to talk a little bit, just very briefly, a couple of sentences on the critical importance here of the science policy framework interface in the region, and the fact that this is exactly what we're trying to support in bringing all of the research institutions together. And I did look in the chat and realized that there were a few others that we are hearing about some of the things this morning that we didn't know about. And I'm sure that that we're going to be in touch with all of you on the work that you've been doing. The issue of funding, there is some funding available, and I want to appreciate here in my final comments the support for this program, not just from our contracting parties and UN agencies, but also the Swedish Ministry of Environment, the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of States program that we are currently implementing, the ACP-MEA's project, phase 3, as well as the Integrating Water, Land, and Ecosystems project, which is one of the Secretariat's projects in support, in collaboration with the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, supporting preliminary interventions for addressing the influx of sargassum. So we do have some support there. I also want to follow up on Leo's comment regarding the political level work, and the fact that we do recognize that the heads of government and as well as the ministers are dealing with so many crises right now in the region. We need to keep this particular one on their radar screen. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the prime ministers were very much involved at the early stages of this, because it was one of the few crises they were dealing with besides, you know, high indebtedness. Now they have COVID-19, now they have loss of tourism, and of course the hazards continue. So I think that political interface must be a significant part of this, and I would urge that perhaps one of the ways, Leo and others, that we could really bring this to the ministers is through the already requested working group on sustainable blue economy for Latin America and the Caribbean. This is one option. I'm sure there are others, but because it is so much linked to the economic aspects of the marine space in the region, I think that would be an appropriate home for it. And of course, we've heard about the links to the UN Decade on Science, and the Secretariat has leadership for the area of a clean ocean for the next decade, and this is very much linked to that. And of course, we have the Decade of Action on the SDGs. But along with that, I want to make sure that we link the work that UNEP is doing on the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, because we're also seeing, because of the upset within the ecosystems, we're seeing a decline in ecosystems as well for a number of reasons. And so I think that the work on the UN Decade of Ocean Science in this regard must be very much linked to the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration as well. And of course, you know, the hundreds of partners that have been established across the region, obviously the network is going to get wider and wider and wider, and we've heard about partnership over and over. The youth, bringing the young people into this is critical. The coastal community organizations, pushing the citizen science. These are some of the areas where I think that we really need to make some inroads over the next couple of years in order to make sure that we have a very strong regional alliance in order to address this very critical and impactful issue of sargassum. So thank you very much to all of you, and all the very, very best. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lorna. And again, I would also like to reiterate our thanks to the 172 who are still online out of the maximum of 300. And for me, these 2 hours that we had scheduled originally, which is now gone over to 2.5 hours, so quickly. I think there's so much interest, so much information, and so much value in this webinar and the process. And we couldn't stop at just 4. In the sense that, as was mentioned earlier, we will move on to the 5th webinar in the series in the next 2 months, around February, where, as we said, it would bring the opportunities for collaboration, collaboration being a key word, across both sides of the Atlantic. But again, the 2.5 hours, starting with the opening remarks from the 3 Ls, Leticia, Lorna, and Leo, was really good in setting the overall tone. And then we had the country, then we had Chris and Ileana giving us an overview of the Cartagena and the opportunities there with the white paper, some country level experience from Guadeloupe, from Mexico, and from Trinidad and Tobago. Was really, I think, interesting, practical problems. And then the UNTP with the synergies, and also Emma's comment about the policy linkages, as well as the FAO, very interesting, the uses publication that I think we will all be using much more, really gave a good groundwork. But then the overall question and answers, I think that session, even though it was a bit rushed, was really useful in getting across and responding to some of the queries. But just to mention that we will have a recording of this online on the event website, so everyone can still access it, those that have missed it. We will also share the presentations, so you'll have a chance to interact directly with the resource persons, etc. But then in terms of following up, and I guess the 4+3, Leo, his conclusion during the panel discussion, the 4+3, 7 points in terms of collaboration, finance, etc. But here, 4 key aspects at the local and national level. And we've seen the different approaches either at Mexico or Guadeloupe or Trinidad that's happening. But then also at the regional level, Caribbean, and here with Lorna, with Cesar, we have opportunities for engagement. And then at the more international or global level, and this is where I think with UNIA coming up, the possibility of bringing this issue to a higher level for collaboration, not only across 2 sides of the Atlantic, but also globally. I think there's a lot of scope. Cesar talked about the open science meeting that's coming up with GESAN that provides another opportunity. But I think the conversation will continue. So with that, I think I would also like to thank you for your patience and staying with us for this 2.5 hours. It's been amazing. Thank you very much. I think we'll end the call here, the webinar, but we want to have a group picture with all the panelists if they're still online. So please turn on your cameras so we can have one final group picture and say bye to everyone. Thank you very much. Great. Anyone missing? Milka,
everybody's listening.
Milka also for working so hard behind the scenes. Chris, yeah, Milka, there you are.
Take the picture. Mahesh, you are taking it, the picture.
Yeah, okay, I'm taking it. Done. 3 pictures will be tweeted. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Hasta luego.
Adiós todos.
Hasta luego. Hasta la próxima. Chao. Bye, everyone.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye.